Top of the morning to all of you. Welcome to this 90-minute Sunday joyride we call The Sweat. Asleep at the wheel would be Jessie, Coffield, and yours truly, Emerson, Lotzia. Time to help you guys get those lineups set.
Speak for yourself, so you'll want to pay very close attention to every single thing we have to say, like the following injury news and notes. Bears wide receiver Allen Robinson is reportedly not expected to play, and Khalil Mack is a game-time decision.
All right, newly acquired defensive back Eli Apple could start for the Saints today against the Vikings with starting corner Ken Crawley inactive. And then there's Colts running back Marlon Mack, who, rumor has it, has a good shot to play against Oakland.
49ers running back Matt Breida is likely to be active. However, he will be limited. And Washington running back Chris Thompson is expected to suit up against the Giants.
Finally, Packers wide receiver Randall Cobb dealing with that hamstring that's kept him out for 3 weeks. He is expected to play once again against the Rams. So this sounds like a perfect time to bring in this super positive and bubbly DK Live duo, Jeff Ulrich and Greg Ehrenberg. Jeff, I want to start with Randall Cobb returning. Who do you target on this offense now with Green Bay expected to be at full strength in the passing game?
I mean, quite frankly, this week I think you kind of target everyone. It's such a good matchup and such a good game environment against the Rams. I wouldn't personally go to Cobb necessarily. And by everyone, I mean, Jimmy Graham, Devontae Adams. You probably leave the running backs out of it. But, Cobb, I think, just adds a little bit of boost to Aaron Rodgers. I still don't think we know his usage yet. He's coming off a pretty serious hamstring injury. So I wouldn't necessarily go there for DFS. It probably does mark Skeldez-Bantling down a little bit, whatever his name is, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But other than that, I still think Jimmy Graham, I still think Devontae Adams, and I do think it gives a boost to Aaron Rodgers.
Greg, what do you think? How much does a return of Cobb boost Aaron Rodgers' value?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That's definitely not what his name is. But I do think that this is a pretty good spot overall for the Packers passing game. One other guy that Jeff didn't mention is Geronimo Allison, who is at 5,000. I just think that this sets up really well for game stacks. The Rams make a ton of sense because the Packers' defense is no good, and the Rams have just been steamrolling everybody. They're going to score a ton of points. And then we're going to see the Packers playing catch-up. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. So the passing game makes sense. Game stacks make sense. Throwing in some of the Packers wide receivers with, like, Todd Gurley and Robert Woods who are going to be popular. It's a good GPP way to go.
Hey, guys, so this just coming down from the Chicago Bears official Twitter account. Allen Robinson and Khalil Mack are inactive today. So, Greg, how much does it hurt Mitch Trubisky that he's not going to have Allen Robinson? Khalil Mack isn't going to go. So should you be fading that top-priced Bears defense?
So I don't know if I'm super interested in the Bears defense. I don't think I'm all that interested in the Jets offense either, but I still think that Mitch Trubisky is fine to roster because if we look at his big fantasy games, other than the 1-5 touchdown performance, he does a lot of it with his legs, which I still think is in play. I think Taylor Gabriel is a pretty good wide receiver target at 5,100. He was not good last week, but back-to-back 100-yard receiving games the 2 weeks prior to that. So I think there's plenty of upside in Gabriel for 5,100. So I like him, and I like Mitch Trubisky.
What do you think, Jeff? Do you agree with that, or are you feeling like you want to give him the fade?
No, I think if anything, this bumps up Mitch Trubisky. It just, there's less of a chance that the Chicago defense is going to go out and dominate the game. There's more of a chance that it's going to stay close, and Trubisky's going to have to score more. So the Jets secondary isn't good at all. I mean, the loss of Allen Robinson doesn't really concern me. He was kind of just like acting as a possession receiver underneath. The big play guys still Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton, Tariq Cohen. Allen Robinson was kind of a nothing to begin with. So, you can still use Trubisky. The bigger concern there is the weather. I really want to hear Steve Buchanan's take on this weather thing.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's supposed to be like 51 degrees, still a chance of rain in there.
I think he's actually like a meteorologist. So
I think he is too. That's what I heard.
We'll get to that. We'll get to him later on that. Thanks, Jeff, for reminding us of that.
Absolutely loves it. Yeah, feel free to bring that up at the end of the show when you guys are together here, Jeff. Sure. Which, Jeff, by the way, how much would you consider plugging in a limited like Matt Breida into your lineup, taking into play that he's facing that second-to-last Arizona rushing defense?
Yeah, no, the $6 million man, Matt Breida, half man, half machine. No, thanks. I mean, I don't know. I think he got hurt on the second play last week, and then we saw, Mozart or whatever, Raheem Mozart, the Mozart 6 come in. I mean, there's no sense in targeting the San Francisco offense. They're rotating running backs. They're not that good to begin with. I think Arizona's in a bounce back spot, so zero interest in Breida for me.
How much interest do you have in Breida, Greg?
No interest in Breida, but I do think that Raheem Mostert, I wouldn't say that he's like a must-start type of guy, but I do think that he's a pretty sensible value play at 3,800. If you look at his efficiency the last couple of games, 7 carries for 59 yards, 12 carries for 87 yards. I think that they're going to need like 8 to 15 carries or so from him with Breida limited, and we've seen him be able to do damage in a limited amount of snaps. So I think with that kind of efficiency and a cheap price, that's a good GPP play.
Real quick, too, Greg, it sounds like Chris Thompson is going to play. So what's that? I guess what's his value, and what's this do for Adrian Peterson?
Yeah, so I think this is more of an Adrian Peterson game, and I'm definitely a little bit biased as somewhat of a Giants fan that I just think they totally stink and they're going to get steamrolled every single game they play. So I kind of look at this as the Giants are probably going to be behind this game. The Redskins are going to be playing ahead. And usually when they're ahead, they use Adrian Peterson. When the score is closer, they're behind. Chris Thompson is the guy. So I think that Peterson is going to be the one to kind of run out the clock towards the end of the game.
Jeff, where do you sit on this? Does Thompson playing actually help Peterson's value?
I don't know if it helps it, but I hate to agree. I'm kind of on team Adrian Peterson this week. I mean, the Giants got rid of their best pass defender in, Snacks Harrison this week. So I don't know how that could possibly improve an already terrible defense. This sets up as a really good spot for Adrian Peterson. I'm kind of surprised more people weren't talking about him this week, to be honest, because, again, I mean, when you lose your best run defender and then you have a team that likes to pound the ball as much as Washington does and is very risk averse, I mean, it just sets up for like 25 carries from Adrian Peterson. So I'm on the Adrian Peterson train this week.
Guys, let's run through some questions. How about it? Lots
Sure.
of people on Facebook. Good. I'm glad you're on board.
Let's
here,
ruin
Jeff.
some lineups. Let's ruin some weekends.
Yeah, you guys are pretty doggone good at that. Jeff,
Oh
do you
my
like Jeff? Do you like Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce?
I do. I mean, those are two, really big spots. I mean, Travis Kelce has done well against the Broncos before. And, when you're looking at people to target from that KC offense, I think Kareem Hunt and Kelce make the most sense this week. So Devontae Adams, I don't need to say much. I mean, this guy's been balling, and it's such a good spot that, yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, I think he's a great anchor this week.
Hey, Greg, Taylor Gabriel or Marvin Jones for flex?
Yeah, Taylor Gabriel for me. I think at 5,100 mentioned before with Allen Robinson out, that probably means more looks, more targets going towards Gabriel. And we've seen him have really big games too the last 3 weeks. I think we could overlook the one bad performance from last week.
Hey, Jeff, so Marlon Mack will play today. So Marlon Mack or Phillip Lindsay?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it kind of comes down to what you think the Broncos are going to be able to do in this game. You think they're going to be able to keep it close. It really does lend itself to a big Phillip Lindsay game. I think I would go with Lindsay just from the fact that we're not sure how healthy Marlon Mack is, and there's still a couple running backs in play there. Phillip Lindsay should, be getting well over 60% of the workload regardless of game flow. We might see Booker get in if things get out of hand, but I think I'd lean Lindsay there very slightly. I still like Mack, but I'd go Lindsay.
Greg, one more for you. Like a White Thompson running back stack? I know you just said you were more on the Adrian Peterson.
Do I like a White Thompson running back stack?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm assuming that's James White, but James White doesn't play till tomorrow night. I don't understand why that.
Yeah.
That would be
Lots of correlation there.
Yeah, we'll give you a pass on that one. Okay? We'll take some time to go back to the questions. You guys hang tight because we're bringing in Reed and Julian for Chase or Fade after this.
Taryn Azak in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. So, you know how New England's tight end Rob Gronkowski did not travel to Chicago last week for the Pats win over the Bears? Well, he's traveling tomorrow for Monday night's road game against the Buffalo Bills, and quoting the 6'6" powerhouse, "It's going to be poppin', just straight poppin'." We still do not know if we will actually see him play as he continues to deal with a back injury, but he addressed reporters on Saturday saying, "Obviously, I feel better. I've been taking steps every single day forward." Gronk grew up in Western New York attending Bills games, so it's a treat for him to play at New Era Field. It's also been a treat for fantasy owners to watch the tight end play his hometown team. In 13 career games against the Bills, Gronk has over 1,000 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns, the most against any team in his career. Bottom line, if Gronk is good to go, he needs to be in your lineups this week.
Alrighty, we are back, and we've got some new faces in new places. Good morning to Reed Fowler and Julian Edlow of DK Live. Just a couple hot take machines up in here, no big deal.
How about a little chase or fade, guys? Not that you really have a choice here. So the Broncos defense learned something from their Week 4 loss to the Chiefs and will be able to neutralize Pat Mahomes today. Chase or fade it, Reed?
Yeah, I'm going to fade that he won't be able to ball out. I mean, if we're talking about 4 touchdowns, then yeah, maybe that's the case, because when you think about this game as a 10-point favorite, they might just get well ahead of these guys, and Mahomes might not need to be as illustrious as he has been so far. And I know I'm talking about Julian's boy here, but he's hit 300 yards in all but one game, multiple touchdowns in all but 2 games, and this guy has an 8.8 touchdown rate, which is the highest in the league right now. We saw that last year, obviously, with Deshaun Watson. He's throwing it at an unbelievable clip. So I do think he does well. Play Patrick Mahomes.
Hey, is your boy getting neutralized today, Julian? Chase or fade this?
Oh, there is no way the Denver Broncos defense can neutralize Patrick Mahomes. He has over 350 yards in consecutive games. He has 4 passing touchdowns in consecutive games. And, I mean, this guy put up, 26 DraftKings points against Denver in Denver earlier this year. You'd think he'd have a chance to have a better game in Kansas City today. And I do love Kareem Hunt at 7,100 this week on this slate a lot. But these guys can both have big games together. Kareem Hunt had 29.5 DraftKings points in Week 4 against Denver when Mahomes had a good game as well. So I don't think liking Mahomes has anything to do with saying Kareem Hunt might have a bad game, Mahomes might have a bad game. These guys are both going to have good games at home against the Broncos.
Yeah, Mahomes, so you predicted in the preseason would throw for 8,000 yards this year.
I think it was 10,000.
Absolutely ridiculous. All right. Anyway, come on, let's get the show back on the rails here. The Lions waited 5 years for a 100-yard rusher, and now rookie running back Kerryon Johnson has 2 100-yard games under his belt. He's due for another one today against Seattle. Jules, chase or fade?
Yeah, I'm going to chase this. I love Kerryon Johnson. $5,300 is still underpriced for him, even though he's up $800 since last week. But we saw what he did to the Miami Dolphins. He got 21 touches. He went for 170-something yards, almost 180 combined yards, 22.9 DraftKings points without even reaching the end zone. This Seattle defense is no longer the scary Legion of Boom anymore. They're a crippled version of themselves. So on the road in Detroit, I love Kerryon Johnson in this spot. The only reason I might not be playing as much Kerryon Johnson as I want is because of Reed's guy, Philip Lindsay, at the exact same price point at $5,200 against Kansas City with no Royce Freeman.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I totally agree. I mean, if you look at Kerryon Johnson, you also have to take a look at Matt Stafford. His attempts have gone down 3 times in the last 3 games, where he saw a low of 22 in the last game that they played before the bye. So when you look at Kerryon Johnson, you look at this game flow, Seattle is the #1 team in terms of run plays across the entire season at 49%. So this is going to be a slow-moving game. It's a low implied game total. So yeah, Kerryon Johnson, especially with Theo Riddick out, you don't worry about LeGarrette Blount getting volume. You worry about those touchdowns being vultured. But volume-wise, Kerryon Johnson's a solid play.
Real quick, Reed, I know Jules just mentioned Lindsay's also your guy. We have a question on YouTube. Kerryon or Lindsay?
I got to go Philip Lindsay if you look at that spot. Okay. Again, it's prime for both, but I have to go Lindsay there because it's his.
Jules, where do you sit on that one?
It's so close for me, and I actually have Philip Lindsay in a lot of lineups just because I can't get that $100 to get Kerryon Johnson.
Okay.
If you have the money to fit either of them, this is like as close of a coin flip play for me as it gets. If you're making multiple lineups, I would use both of them. But I think I agree with Reed. If it's just one lineup and you need one, I think I would take Lindsay.
Cool.
All right, guys, so Allen Robinson is out for the Bears.
Yep,
so Taylor Gabriel will see 10-plus targets today versus the Jets, and he's a worthy fantasy play. Do you chase or fade this, Reed?
I want to fade it here. I think he gets pretty close, but 10-plus targets is a lot. I know we've seen him get quite a few, but Anthony Miller is back in. I know Robinson is out, but again, this might be a game where you don't necessarily have to attack the Jets secondary. They do give up the most targets per game at 27, the most receptions, the most yards. They're just the best for opposing receivers. So yeah, in essence, you could see that, but Trubisky is throwing at about 30 attempts per game. I think he spreads that across the entire team. I think Tariq Cohen obviously gets some. Jordan Howard might be more of a run game in terms of them getting up big in this game. So I'm going to say fade, but I think he still has a productive day.
Yeah, I mean, Julian, when we saw him against the Pats, Trubisky threw the ball 50 times, and Gabriel was targeted just 4. So do you see him being a viable fantasy play today? I mean, we are keeping in mind Allen Robinson is out.
Yeah, I do think he's a viable fantasy play. I'm going to fade 10 targets for Gabriel, even with Robinson out. Gabriel's only gotten 10 targets in one game this season. He has 9 total targets in his last 2 games combined. So that seems a little bit too lofty of an expectation for him. I don't like Gabriel in cash just because there's so many plays that I think are more safe. If we're talking 5,100, we just talked about Phillip Lindsay and Kerryon Johnson at 52 and 5,300, who you can play in your flex over Gabriel. But in a GPP, I think he's a fine play. He can obviously, I don't think he's going to get 10 targets, but he'll probably get 6, 7, 8, and he's always a candidate to break one loose to the house against a bad Jets defense.
All right, Antonio Brown saw 16 targets in Week 1 versus Cleveland. However, Juju Smith-Schuster will have more targets and yards than Brown in this rematch. So chase it or fade it right now, Julian.
Fade. Come on. This is could it happen? Sure, but it would be dumb to say that Juju is going to have a better game than Brown on any given week. I think these guys are both, they've shown capable of having big games together, especially at home against a team like the Cleveland Browns. So both are fine plays. But if you're telling me straight up Juju over Antonio Brown, I can't go that far. Antonio Brown is $1,100 more expensive at $8,500. So, picking between the two of them with the salary cap, then it becomes a little tighter. But AB got 16 targets in Week 1 against the Browns. He's coming off his best 2 games of the season with over 100 yards in each of his last 2 games, and 3 total touchdowns. We know Ben Roethlisberger generally is a better play, more productive at home. I think this is a great spot for Antonio Brown.
Yeah, and Reed, Juju Smith-Schuster had only 8 targets in that Week 1 game against Cleveland, but dude has been targeted in double digits, except for 1 game since then.
Yeah, this one's really close for me, and so I'm just going to sort of prove the other side of this, where he potentially could get more targets. Look, AB is a guy who just is a target hog. We've seen him double digits on average season over season, so I don't blame Julian for going to that. 23% target share for AB, 21 for Juju. Yeah, Juju has seen 8 or more targets in 5 of 6 games. And on top of that, he's not going to see Denzel Ward, who is proving to be a pretty good cornerback. Now, AB is the best, and so he's not going to be targeted, or he's not going to be targeted. Yeah, that works out. But at the same time, like Juju he has the most receiving yards for a slot in the season so far. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to Juju to get more targets than AB. It'll be really close.
Just to clarify things for Reed there, I'm not playing Antonio Brown today.
Double negatives. They screw me up.
Yeah.
Negative and a negative is a positive.
Guys, we got a lot of these questions rolling in, so let's get to some of these. Brian Naylor wants to know, Reed, would you start Jay Reed over Burton?
I mean, no. I mean, Alex Smith has not proven to show a ceiling, and Jordan Reed, those injuries could be catching up to him. He hasn't really had a big game since Week 1, so I would go Burton.
Jules, Ebron, or Kittle at the tight end position?
Ooh, with Jack Doyle back in the mix for the Colts, I don't think we need to risk one of those guys going off and the other one not. Kittle's been one of the favorite targets for C.J. Beathard there in San Fran, so I would go Kittle.
Hey, Reed, Anthony Miller or Martavis Bryant?
Oh, man.
Wow.
I mean, Anthony Miller for that spot. I get why the Martavis Bryant take is there, just because you would see more targets. I think those go to Jared Cook. And Seth Roberts is someone, too, that I'm looking at. But I would go Miller in that one.
Jules, Mark Ingram or Latavius Murray in a PPR?
I think you got to go Latavius Murray with Dalvin Cook still out. It's against the Saints, who the Vikings are probably going to be attacking through the air because of just how poor that secondary has been. But Murray's had consecutive really good games, and we never know with Ingram how much Kamara could be involved or take some of that usage. So the backfield belongs to Murray, so I think you got to go there.
Hey, Reed, Aaron Jones or Golden Tate in my flex standard league?
You got to Golden Tate. I mean, Aaron Jones, we just don't know yet. Again, prime spot in that prime matchup, but his usage and Mike McCarthy, you can never really trust him to actually do the right thing and play the right players in that backfield. So I'm going to go Golden Tate.
Let's see. Last one here. Jules, I don't know if you have all the prices pulled up, but Joel Welch would like to know what wide receivers under 4K like Paul Richardson have good upside or a better upside than Paul Richardson.
Wide receivers under 4K.
Yeah.
Pardon me while I look down at my
all
laptop.
Good, all good. This is live television.
I believe Martavis Bryant is in that range. Yeah, Martavis Bryant for 3,700. No Amari Cooper. So Jordy Nelson might be stepping into that wide receiver 1 role, but Bryant's going to see a lot more time on the field with Cooper gone. So I think he's the chalky play for under 4K this week.
Sweetness, dude.
All right, guys, we've got some inactive updates for you coming up after this.
Pat Mayo here with an exciting new way to heat up your Sundays this football season. DraftKings has teamed up with Buffalo Wild Wings to bring you a fantasy experience like no other. Blazin Fantasy Football, a new free game only available inside Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Want to win free wings for a year, game tickets, Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards, or Blazin Rewards points? Here's how. Head to Buffalo Wild Wings, download the Blazin Rewards app, and join. Already a member? Not a problem. Just log in and fire up the app. Click or tap the Blazin Fantasy Football icon, join a contest, draft your lineup, and get ready to compete against rivals in all Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Blaze your way up the leaderboard by drafting who you think will be the top 8 players, including kickers. Best part? You've got a chance to really rack up the score with your Blazin pick. It's worth double points, so choose wisely. Don't just wing it. Draft your team in one of Sunday's 4 contests before each half of the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. Then, grab some wings, sit back, and watch your team light up the leaderboard. Come back every Sunday for new contests each week. DraftKings and Buffalo Wild Wings, the right stack for Sundays.
All right, let's run through some of the latest news and notes when it comes to injuries. These are all official now. Okay. Allen Robinson, he is out. Khalil Mack, out. And remember, the Bears defense is the highest priced defense on the board.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Colts running back Marlon Mack, he's going to be in.
Yep, he's in.
Active, yeah.
Yep.
49ers running back Matt Breida,
he's in,
but expected to be limited.
Yep, and Washington running back Chris Thompson, he returns to the lineup as well. And Randall Cobb is back. So that whole passing game in Green Bay, just kind of spooky. They're facing the Rams. That will be at full strength. Speaking of full strength, let's send it over to Pat Mayo, who is live in the PME studios. Take it away, brother.
Just to clarify on that, Marlon Mack is in for the game. So remember, you can play Marlon Mack this week.
You can play Marlon Mack.
Not Khalil Mack, though. You don't want to be playing him. He is inactive. The other big inactive to watch out for, James Washington, is out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ryan Switzer will move into the slot, which means Juju will bump to the outside. He'll see fewer snaps in the slot than he would on a regular basis. I don't think it detrimentally affects him because we're going to talk about our favorite plays. I'm here with Gary and Thorn, obviously.
Yes, hello.
DK Live and the DraftKings playbook. But let's start at running back. Gurley? People are talking themselves out of Gurley this week.
I have no problem playing Todd Gurley, and there are ways to afford Todd Gurley. There's
you
a
can afford Todd Gurley.
lot of players under $4,000 who are, some of them I don't like as much as others, but they're viable options to get in.
If it was up to you and you could play Gurley and let's say one of the guys down at the bottom, whether it be like Gurley and Lindsey, which is going to be a very popular stack, Gurley and Jalen Richard, Gurley and Isaiah Crowell.
Probably Gurley and Richard would be my favorite.
Or would you rather play like Mixon and Hunt? Because that's the choice you kind of have to make.
I think that I would rather attack that $7,000 tier running back. I really like Kareem Hunt. He's kind of the anchor I have in a lot of my lineups. I just think that where he's been so good since week 4, I mean, he's actually been better on a per opportunity basis than Gurley has, and Gurley's been fantastic over that stretch of time.
But he gets more opportunity.
Yes, that is true. But, Kareem Hunt's been RB3 in PPR formats the last 4 weeks.
Good matchup.
Going up against the Broncos team that's allowed 220 rushing yards the last 3 weeks. And you look at how the Chiefs have been able to utilize their offense at home. I don't know how the Broncos are going to stop them. They average 5.7 red zone possessions per game at Arrowhead. I just think that means a lot of red zone looks and a lot of red zone touches for Kareem Hunt. I like him a lot this week.
I like the way that Mixon's going to be used in this game against the Bucs. I think it's just an equal opportunity, bad defense.
Sure.
In terms of the matchup. So
does it surprise you though? I know that Fantrax does these amazing sort of which guys are being talked about the most. I mean, James Conner seems like he's the most popular play in this tier. That seems weird to me.
Yeah, I actually have an article. People may not realize this. I do an ownership show every Friday, and I release an article of guys that are going to be the highest owned of the week. Conner's definitely in that mix. Everyone is paying up for some sort of running back this week, and everyone's paying down to the exact same guys. So if you're looking for like a pivot, either at the top or at the bottom, Barkley is the guy no one's using.
This is true.
So Barkley makes some sense against the Redskins, and you don't need to own a lot of him to be massively overweight to the field. But at the bottom, I think Crowell is the guy that you can go to. Chris Carson is another one that everyone's on the same, like, 3 guys who are cheap.
Sure.
And Crowell is the one who's going to get a ton of volume that no one's using. Bad matchup, obviously, but it's a spot where you can get 20-plus touches.
I like Carson as a pivot.
$3,700.
I like Carson as a pivot. I don't think he's going to be seeing 85% of the snaps. I think that Cannon probably gets in here for somewhere around 30 to 35%. Like, I don't think Crowell jumps from 45% to 85. And also, he is maybe the most game script dependent and touchdown dependent running back that we have in fantasy at this point.
But here's the fun thing about the Jets is they might not have any other options than just to turn. If the under has, like, the total's dropped in this game by a ton and the spread has somehow widened, although there's no Khalil Mack or Allen Robinson for the Bears, it just seems like the Jets will try to run the ball 25 times.
And they might. But I still think that unless he actually gets a touchdown, it's come through every single game this season. He's averaging 5.1 DK points when he doesn't score a touchdown. Granted, 2 of the games he has scored a touchdown, he scored twice, which is fine. But I just think you're looking at a team that has the 3rd lowest implied team total of the week. Yes, the wind might force their hand to run the ball a little bit more, but I think in general, it's not going to help their offense move the football consistently.
Potentially, but I mean, if we're talking about GPPs, we're talking about upside in this circumstance. Like, I love Jalen Richard. He's $4,200. A lot of people are going to use him.
Doesn't have the same touchdown upside.
His upside just in general is nowhere in the same stratosphere as Crowell.
That's fair, and I think you're right, because we talked about this with, like, Nick Chubb and players of that ilk around him, where Chubb probably has the highest expectancy to score multiple touchdowns in this game. And I would agree with you that Crowell is that guy. Maybe Chris Carson could get in a little bit here, but we don't know who the goal line touches are necessarily going to go to.
The only other real comparable, I think, down in that price range to Doug Martin is probably LeGarrette Blount. But LeGarrette Blount actually does nothing outside of the touchdown.
Yeah, he won't be utilized inside the 20s. I just think that with these types of players, if you do get a sense of how you think the game script is going to go down, because they're so script dependent, that just kind of sets your feelings off. And I don't think the Jets are in a situation where they score a lot of points. The Bears haven't allowed a rushing touchdown all season long, so it seems weird to kind of bank on a guy for scoring touchdown upside.
I mean, the thing
is, on a defense who hasn't just allowed it.
I mean, if you're going to give me 20-ish touches, I'll take the yardage that comes along with it. I mean, we've seen Crowell play well against good defenses before and break big plays. He's a big play guy.
Yeah, he's a big play guy.
And I don't need, and the thing is, I don't need him to score 40 points. That's on the table for him, as opposed to other guys.
40?
I mean, what did he put up against the Broncos? Put up 200 and something yards and 2 touchdowns.
I would say the ceiling for Crowell is probably about like 25 points. But no, you're right. Look, he has a ceiling. I just do not want to use him in this game.
Okay, receivers. Cash games, I think you can look at Juju and start there if you really want to, even though he's going to be playing on the outside. Robert Woods is a fine option. I like Godwin, Geronimo Allison, and Doug Baldwin too. Because if you're going to pay up at running back and you're going to pay down at receiver, you can use those 3 guys. I had no problem with that.
Yeah, I think all those guys are solid plays. We are both on the record as liking Juju more than Antonio Brown, given their price points.
For the price points. And we're both on the record for pro Martavis Bryant at $3,700.
We are both pro Martavis Bryant. I'll say, too, in the sense that...
P. Rich at $4,000?
Nah.
P. Rich?
Not really for me. But sort of in a Saquon Barkley-esque way, we talked a little bit about this, where I think so many people are going to be trying to stack and find cheap elements of that Tampa-Cincinnati game, because there are cheap elements available to you. They might shy away a little bit from this Raiders-Packers game, specifically the Packers side of the football. Like, I don't mind... Rams-Packers. I don't mind taking Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and stacking them together.
I love Adams.
I love Devontae. And I don't think he's going to quite be at the ownership level of some of these other receivers.
No, Woods will likely be higher owned than Devontae Adams will.
I would agree.
Tight end. Njoku?
Seems like a safe play.
Uzma
also seems like a safe play.
I like Herndon as a sleeper at $2,800 if you're punting.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have definitive word yet from Arizona, but I even kind of liked Ricky Seals-Jones before we had a little bit of the uncertainty with Jermaine Gresham.
He was dealing with the forearm injury. It doesn't look like, I mean, this is going to be a game-time decision for later, but Jermaine Gresham is on the bad side of questionable with the heel injury.
Yeah.
That's why. But I think I'd rather just play Herndon at 28 anyway.
That's fine. I look, this is a game where he came up with exactly 0 fantasy points in week 5, so I understand it, but he had a lot of air yards in that game, and this is the only matchup we've seen Arizona be a viable offense. In San Francisco, 6 of 7 opponents they've faced this season have gone above their implied team total. Like it's it's almost set in stone that a team is going to outscore their implied team total against the Niners. That means probably 3 to 4 touchdowns for the Cardinals.
For QBs, I got narrowed down to 3 guys
Okay.
at different price levels, depending on how much you want to pay. I like Rodgers at the top end at 64. In the mid-tier, I like Jameis. And if you're going to save some money, I like Derek Carr.
I like it. I've got a little exposure to Andrew Luck, but I agree with you. I do prefer Aaron Rodgers in that particular tier. Yeah, I mean, Watson is perfectly fine. Or excuse me, yeah, Winston is perfectly fine in this setting. Carr, yeah.
He's going to chuck it.
He's probably going to be forced to throw the ball quite a bit in this contest. We've seen, even though the Raiders have a slow pace, we've seen quick-paced teams kind of drag them into that script before. Think that Cleveland Browns game from a couple weeks back. So, yeah, it's certainly on the table.
All right. Finally, defenses. Steelers are going to be like 25% owned. Probably a reason to fade. You can use them in cash if you want to. I like the Cardinals at $3,200. I don't mind that pairing with David Johnson, but the Ravens, the Lions are two that I'm going to be pivoting down towards. The Ravens especially because people are off them.
Yeah, people are afraid of Cam. And look, I love Cam, but I think this Ravens defense is perfectly
Cam can take 6 sacks
fine.
and score 3 touchdowns.
Exactly.
Turn out fine.
I think the Redskins too. I think at this point, the Giants' offensive line is hot garbage. They can't move the football. I think the Redskins, who have a very good defensive line, maybe an underrated defensive line, but we said this before, the best unit in that game by far is Redskins defense.
We will take one question from the chat.
Sure.
This is from Rebecca. Breda or Allison? Full point PPR. I would play Geronimo Allison.
I think just got to play
Ain't
Allison.
trusted Matt Breda this week.
It's a tough one.
Gary and Thorn, he'll be back later on in the sweat. That will do it for me. We'll send it back to the studio right now.
All right, good stuff, gents. Now let's get you those Papa John's picks we have not been teasing.
I got a pizza.
I got a pizza.
I got a pizza. Hey, I'm Brendan Glassheen, along with the DK Live duo and Adam Levitan and Reed Fowler. They're here to help you make your pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. You get 25% off any regular menu-priced orders by using the promo code DK25. We're targeting 3 games in Week 8 with interesting storylines. Let's start with the Ravens-Panthers game. Baltimore falls in a gut-wrenching fashion last week. First ever point-after miss by Justin Tucker, and then Carolina beat the reigning Super Bowl champion Eagles. Feels like we have 2 sneaky good teams here, guys, one from each conference meeting up. Levy, who you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the home team and the Panthers, and I think people underestimate the advantage the Panthers do have at home. Getting Thomas Davis back has been good for their defense, so I expect a really, really low-scoring, kind of grinded out game, and I think we saw some of the holes in Joe Flacco's game. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Panthers here.
Reed, which team prevails in Charlotte?
Yeah, I think Carolina, what scares me a little bit about them is they didn't score for 3 quarters, and I get it, that was a emotional game for them, but still, that does scare me a little bit. In Baltimore, when you look at them, right, they're the fastest team in the NFL. They have over 70-plus plays per game, and you're right, Baltimore does scare you a little bit in terms of Joe Flacco. He's always Joe Flacco, but they're throwing a ton, right? They're throwing a ton, and that Carolina defense, if there is a chink in their armor, it is against the pass game. They're really strong against the run, so I'm gonna take Baltimore in this one, not by a lot, but Baltimore.
All right, next is a battle for last place. Told you these games are interesting. The 1-6 Niners face the 1-6 Cardinals. Reed, Byron Leftwich will make his debut as Arizona's interim offensive coordinator. Do the Cards bounce back after being throttled by the Broncos?
I think you said it right there. Any team throttled by the Broncos, I don't know if I'm going to have any sort of confidence in them. And you're right, this is a contest for last place. And Shanahan, I don't think he gets beat by Arizona twice. I don't think Arizona's the type of team that wins twice against the same team. San Francisco's got a ton of injuries, right? Ton of injuries. We've seen it throughout the entire year. But I do think the 49ers do eke this one out for a very interesting, 6-9 game.
Levy, the C.J. Beathard, George Kittle duo is flourishing again. Do they lead San Fran to victory?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Cardinals here. And you mentioned the coaching change. I think that will be good to get Byron Leftwich in there, who learned under Bruce Arians. And the Cardinals obviously had way, way, way more success with Bruce Arians than they did with Mike McCoy, who's since been ousted. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Cardinals here. I think they have more talent. I think they're playing at home. I think Josh Rosen is far better than C.J. Beathard is, who kind of reverted to his check down style on Sunday. So I'm going to stick with the Cardinals.
Last one, Saints at Vikings on Sunday Night Football. New Orleans has won 5 straight, while Minnesota has picked up wins in 3 straight weeks. Which team you picking here, Levitan?
Yeah, 2 really good teams. It's just really hard in the NFL to win back-to-back really big road games. So the Saints go to Baltimore and squeeze out a win there, and then they have to go back up and get ready to play the Vikings on the road again in another really big game. So it's just a tough spot for the Saints in general. And so I think that these teams are pretty even, but the situational spot for the Vikings makes me lean that way.
Reed?
Yeah, I mean, if there is a year that Drew Brees is breaking all of these records and, being the third guy to beat every single team in the NFL, I think this is a year that he can. I think the Saints have a really good offense, obviously, with their full set of running backs and skill players. Again, you see some injuries on Minnesota's side. What I do like about this, and Levy's right, it's tough to win twice on the road, but it's in a dome, right? We see Drew Brees, how good he is on turf as opposed to outside. All that considered, this is going to be a really good game, two really good offenses, but I think the Saints eke this one out.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. That'll do it for this week's edition of Make Your Pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. For Adam and Reed, I'm Brendan, and we'll talk to you next week.
What's up, party people? Welcome back to the Sweat. We are here with a DK Live trio, our first tri-box of the day. We're inching closer to that quad box that you're all looking forward to. Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow, Jeff Ulrich, good morning to all three of you handsome gentlemen.
Yeah, gentlemen, we do need to get your anchors, so, the player you're building your lineup around. Plus, we're going to ask you what DST is the best play for the day. First, just the anchor picks, though. Jeff, who are you going with?
I'm going to go with Kerryon Johnson. You start to look at this matchup, you think, it's Seattle, maybe it's not the best, but, they've given up some massive games to opposing running backs already. Zeke Elliott, the Denver guys had a big day against them combined. Todd Gurley, 3 rushing touchdowns. And Kerryon Johnson last week really did take over, not quite an every down role. Obviously, LeGarrette Blount's still there, but he started to get more involved in the pass game. He was on the field for over 50% of the sort of rushing or sort of passing routes. So I think this is a great spot for Seattle. Or for Johnson, excuse me. If he gets into the end zone, and he had a shot at getting in last week, I think this is 100 yards and a touchdown. It's very likely scenario. Detroit's at home. Seattle, not quite as good a rush defense as people think. I think for 5,300, you just ride him this week because he's uptrending. It's a good spot, and it's a good price.
All right, 5,300, not too bad. Steve, who are you anchoring today?
Yeah, I'm going to go with A.J. Green. It's been hard for me to start a lineup and not lock in Green at that wide receiver position. He's averaging 12 targets a game over the past 3 weeks, a number he should definitely come close to in this matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you look at his individual matchup that he has this week, you see a lot of Carlton Davis. This is someone who's been targeted against 25 times already, allowing 15 receptions for 181 receiving yards. And then we see last week, even in a game where Andy Dalton was struggling against the Chiefs, we still saw Green score 21.7 DK fantasy points with 117 receiving yards. So I feel like in a much better spot here against the Tampa Bay defense, if that's what you want to call it. I feel like this is an absolute smash spot for Green, so I'm going with him.
Yeah, he dominated that target share, 14 of 29 last time out. So, yeah, he's going to be targeted a lot, we would guess. Julian, who are you anchoring today?
Yeah, I think both of those guys have good picks here, actually, but I'm going with James Conner for 7,500. Pittsburgh Steelers running back going up against the Cleveland Browns at home. I just think Connor's in too good of a spot. He showed us, some people were getting weary on him in the middle of the year there, and then he comes back in weeks 5 and 6 and tops 100 yards rushing in both games and scores 2 touchdowns in each game. The matchup here is against the Browns, who he had his best game of the season against in week 1 with over 38 DK points. So I just think this spot sets up way too good for James Conner, and he's still a little bit too underpriced here at 7,500.
All right, now what about a DST you think is a viable play today, Jeff?
I'm going to stick with Detroit. I think most people are going to look, and obviously the Steelers are going to be chalky at 2,300. And obviously they're too cheap, but Detroit's got a lot of upside too. They're at home, and I think sometimes we overlook how important that is. Detroit's put up at least 8 DK points in all of their home matchups this year, and as a unit, they've been very, very efficient getting sacks. They're like a top 8, top 5 team in sacks right now. But then you look at their turnovers; they haven't quite generated as many as you'd think. But turnovers are kind of hard to predict. At some point, they're going to have a big turnover game, and again, at home. This team is trending in the right direction. They made a trade for Snacks Harrison over the week. I think I've said Snacks Harrison's name like 10 times this week. But it's a good spot for Detroit. And again, if you want to get off that Pittsburgh chalk, I think going to Detroit is a fine play.
All right, Jeff mentioned how chalky the Steelers defense is going to be. You don't seem to be very concerned about that, Steve.
No, I mean, they're just too cheap for a defense that should at least grab a few sacks in this game. I mean, we've seen Mayfield get sacked 18 times already this season. He's not very elusive when it comes to that because some of the sacks that he's taken have just been completely unnecessary. I mean, this is a Steelers team that has at least three sacks in 4 of their 6 games this season. So you have to feel good about them in this spot. And then just talk about the salary savings. I mean, there's so many expensive guys that we want to roster this week. You know, Todd Gurley, James Conner, just names like that, AJ Green. I mean, this is a defense that's going to help you get those guys in there. And if you're going to be rostering Conner, it makes sense to get the Steelers defense into that lineup as well. So I feel like even though it's going to be chalky, I'll eat that chalk and I'll take the Steelers defense.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue there because, Jules, you were just talking about how much you like Conner. And so the Steelers defense kind of makes sense if you're going to pay up for him, right?
Yeah, Steve and I see completely eye to eye here.
Bizarre,
and I'm going to be doing
way.
exactly what Jeff did and take my running back and stack it with my defense here. 2,300 is way too cheap for the Steelers this week. Cleveland's been having a really tough time lately. The Steelers are coming off a bye week and they're at home here. They've got 9 sacks in their last 2 games heading into the bye. They've scored 17 DraftKings points in 2 of their last 4 games before that bye. Their only other game in double digits this season was week 1 against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland when they scored 11 DraftKings points. So too good of a spot. I'll eat all the chalk. I'll take Conner. I'll take the Steelers defense. I think they're too good of plays to pass up on.
Hey, guys, we got the questions coming in right now. So let's get to some of these. Steve, Breida or Allison, full PPR flex position?
You got to go with Allison. I think there's just too much questions around Breida this week.
Hey, Jeff, Big Ben or Winston, or you like one more for cash, one more for GPP?
You know, in that range, quite frankly, I'd go Goff for GPP. I think Winston's fine for cash. Tampa Bay's been throwing a lot. It's a really solid matchup against the Bengals. So I don't think Winston's a bad play for cash games. I think tournaments, I'd rather go to Goff, though. It'd be lower owned.
Hey, Julian, Mark Ingram or Jordan Howard as a flex?
Ooh, I don't think you necessarily want to play either of those guys. Give me Jordan Howard there. Ingram's a little too scary with Kamara getting more work there.
All right.
Steve, Antonio Brown and Vance McDonald or AJ Green and OJ Howard?
You're probably going to go Green Howard. I think they have the more upside of the two there, so I'm going to go with them.
So, wait, who did you ask about?
I just asked that question. Antonio Brown and Vance McDonald or AJ Green and OJ Howard?
Okay,
there's like
cool.
50 questions.
I want to
Come on,
make sure.
let's go.
I want to make sure I'm not asking the same question again, even though we're on different, pages.
She's on YouTube. I'm
Trying
on
to be
Pay
good-
attention.
Trying to be good to the people. All right. Well, Steve, do you want to take this one? Jordan Howard, DeSean Jackson, or Funchess PPR flex?
I'll go with Jordan Howard. It's just I don't like the matchup for DeSean Jackson, and then Funchess is too boom or bust for me, so I'll take Howard.
And Steve, how concerned are you about the weather in Chicago against the Jets?
Yeah, we'll just go to the next segment. Let's go to commercial.
Okay. Well,
Actually, okay,
we
sounds good.
we
don't
are
have
going to
time
go
for
to
this one.
commercial, but there's a rumor going around that Steve is actually a meteorologist. So I don't know. I just heard that. So thanks, guys. Hang tight because our top stacks are on the way. And for the last time, Emerson, I'm not talking about pancakes.
No!
Tyrell and Azek in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. It's 2 days ahead of the NFL trade deadline, and one player wants to be heavily involved in it. Veteran Pro Bowler DeSean Jackson has reportedly requested a trade from the Tampa Bay Bucks. The team is refusing to grant him that request, though, but Jackson hopes to find a team that can make better use of his talents. The wide receiver clicked with quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick early in the season. He eclipsed the 100-yard mark in 3 of his first 4 games with the team while hauling in 3 touchdowns. And it's nothing personal, but Jackson does not have the same chemistry with now starter Jameis Winston. In the 2 weeks Winston has been the starter, Jackson has only 6 receptions for 102 yards. Any team that trades for the 31-year-old will also have to take on what's left of his $11 million salary for the season and a non-guaranteed $10 million for 2019. DeSean and the Bucks take on the Bengals today at 1 o'clock in what could be his last game for Tampa Bay.
Top stacks? That sounds good. I'll have that. Reed Fowler, Greg Ehrenberg, welcome back to the program. It's a pleasure.
You've both got a top stack and a contrarian stack for today's main slate. So hit us with just your top one right now, Greg.
Yeah, so for me, it's going to be a Ram stack with Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, and Robert Woods. If you look at the Packers defense this year, they've been pretty terrible, 24th overall in defensive DVOA. And the Rams offense has just basically been automatic points every single game this year. Todd Gurley seems to score like 50 fantasy points and 2 touchdowns every single week. So for cash games, I think it's really safe. They're going to be very chalky for GPPs, but there's so much upside and so much floor for the Rams offense that I think that they're a really sensible play.
Paying up for that one. Reed, what about you? What's your top stack look like?
Yeah, in the same vein, I'm going to go with Andy Dalton and A.J. Green. You're going to want to attack that game. I think a lot of people are. So cash game really for this one. It's a higher price stack. But if you look at this team, you look at Tampa Bay, they've given up, a ton of touchdowns to receivers, to quarterbacks, to every single, and Steve just talked about it, every single skill position that you want to use. So in terms of A.J. Green, and they're both number one, right? The receivers and quarterbacks giving up number one DK fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks and receivers, Tampa Bay is. So I'm just going to stack that game as much as possible. It's going to cost you about 28% of your salary cap. So you're going to have to find value elsewhere. But it's the stack that I'm locking in for cash.
Well, already, Reed T. Let's get weird. Give me that contrarian stack for today.
Yeah, mine's going to be Andrew Luck and Chester Rogers. Like T.Y. Hilton is back. He is healthy. You should see a ton of ownership going up against a depleted Raiders team on both sides of the ball. But Andrew Luck is second to only Patrick Mahomes in touchdowns. He's going to break every single record when you talk about attempts thrown. This is going to be potentially a high-scoring game. On the Colts side, I don't think the Raiders can really keep up. I think they have to, so Jalen Richard is a fine play. But if you look at that, it's 21% of your salary. Game total is 50.5. I really like this spot for Chester Rogers. We've seen him get a ton of targets, and I actually like him a lot more when T.Y. Hilton is in the lineup. So he's not the number one, de facto number one. So that would be my contrarian stack on ownership.
Greg, hypothetically speaking here, let's say your grandma's watching this program. I know she's likely not because she loves our show on SNY on Sundays, but let's say she is, and she really needs a contrarian stack right now. Who would you tell your grandma to look at?
Well, my grandma is really evolving. She had much different interest than what I remember. So I mean, I'm going to look at the same game, but the other side, and that's the Raiders. This game actually, Reed said 50.5 point over under. It's gone up to 51 now. It's still rising. And I really do think this game is shootout potential. If I look at the Raiders side, Derek Carr and Jordy Nelson, I think that makes sense. Martavis Bryant makes some sense also. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. And I think a lot of people might just look at Raiders Colts and say, these two teams both stink. I don't want to roster them. But the defense are bad too. And the offenses are overall pretty cheap. I mean, we could look at Jordy Nelson, the 4,000, Martavis Bryant, 3,700. And I just really think that there's going to be points scored. And we don't need a whole lot of fantasy points for these guys to pay off their salaries.
Yeah, grandma taking a break from quilting to find that.
She doesn't do that either. Her main hobby is just complaining.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
sounds good.
It sounds like a lot of grandmas we know.
Sounds like I'd get along
Oh my God, are you talking
grandma.
about my grandma? So weird.
Yeah,
No, I'm just
seriously.
kidding. I'm just joking, grandma. Reed, talk to me. We got some questions coming in here. Tate or Galladay?
Galladay in that spot. He's the number one receiver there.
Reed, I'll go ahead and hit you with this one too, because I know you're a big fan of Lindsey. Is he a good flex play for tournament play?
He's going to be heavily owned. So like we talked about earlier, I think Kerryon Johnson is a good pivot off of Lindsey if you want to be different, but I think he's in a smash spot. Lindsey is. So I would play him in tournaments.
Greg, Cooks and Woods or Evans and Sanders?
One sec also, I have to address a question I got at the top. I was asked, are White and Thompson good for running back? And I thought I was being asked, is the White Thompson a good running back play?
Oh.
And I had no clue what that was. But I'll say this, I don't like Chris Thompson today, and James White isn't on the slate.
Yeah,
so
precisely.
That's probably the easy answer.
Thank you for clearing that up.
As for this one, it was, what were the combinations
Cooks and
again?
Woods or Evans and Sanders?
Okay, so for me, it's going to be Robert Woods, who I think is kind of the de facto number one receiver for the Rams right now. And then Emmanuel Sanders, who's surprisingly had a monster fantasy year, really pass-friendly script for the Broncos also, who I expect to be playing from behind.
Greg, Jake King says, I can't decide a tight end this week. Can you help him out?
They're all bad.
Well, I think that there are a lot of tight ends that are in play. Personally, for me, my favorite is Jared Cook.
Okay.
I talked about liking the Raiders offense. With Amari Cooper gone, there's extra targets to go around. So I think Cook is pretty sensible, and he's played pretty well with Derek Carr this year and a lot of upside for him.
Hey, Reed, Shady or Latavius in standard?
Well, Shady still, I mean, he's probably active with that concussion, but still, like he's done nothing. He's done nothing this year, so I'm going with Latavius. It's his backfield.
Is Duke Johnson a good play this week, Greg?
Well, I'm about to talk about him in the next segment.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll say
wait,
this.
don't give it away.
Save it then. Save it.
Save it?
Save it.
Save it for grandma.
It's a tease.
Okay,
Save it
well,
for-
I'll say this. Yes, and I'll give more reasons why.
Okay, good stuff.
Greg, Baldwin or Lockett?
Baldwin. I still think that he is the best receiver on the Seahawks. He started the year a little slow due to the bum knee. But I think ultimately going forward, Baldwin should be the number one guy. He should be the guy that sees the most targets.
Lions or Cardinals defense, Reed? I think this is a real question. Why would someone play the Cardinals defense?
Well, I mean, they're going against the 49ers, who are a bad
Okay.
team. And I don't think actually it's a bad
It won't be
play.
very
It's pretty
chalky.
expensive
No.
on DraftKings. So, yeah, on the slate. So, it's if you want to, you don't have to pay up for defense. I think we talked about it, and the other guys have covered it at the beginning of the show and the middle of the show. So, you don't have to pay up, but you're going against CJ Beathard and potentially no Matt Breida. It's a solid
Breida,
play.
We know Breida's he's gonna be a little banged up, but dude, a banged up Breida is going to shred
limited.
that
He's
defense.
in but limited.
Shred it, and I'm a professional.
Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, you're a professional.
You got anything else?
That's his favorite word. Shred is your favorite word.
It
Well, that's
is,
all
we
I
do
do
know
every day
that.
in the gym, Reed.
Oh, here we go.
All right, guys. Well done. Thank you very much. Steve Buchanan is here with his best friend, Julian, after a quick break.
Pat Mayo here with Sunday's Blazin game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. Start at running back, where I just want to say Todd Gurley again because that's probably the right answer. But let's switch it up for once and ride for Joe Mixon against the Bucks. Here's a tip if you haven't seen the second of football all year. Tampa's defense, very bad. And Mixon, he's playing over 75% of the Bengals snaps each week, getting involved in the passing game and controlling all the goal line work on the ground. Plus, he underperformed against the Chiefs in a very visible game Sunday night. That'll keep people off his scent, but you're going to want to use Mixon against Tampa. At receiver, look for Juju Smith-Schuster to have his way. The Browns' defense, once again, dropping below double-digit targets just twice this season. Juju's cracked the 100-yard barrier in 4 of 6 games thus far. The touchdowns have been lacking, sure, but with 6 targets inside the 10-yard line, they'll eventually come, probably starting this week. Finally, at QB, there doesn't seem to be a better time to dial up Aaron Rodgers. Coming off a bye week with all his receivers healthy in a matchup where the opponent is never going to stop scoring. In any game where you can project 40-plus pass attempts for Aaron Rodgers, like this week against the Rams, he's an auto play every single time. Those were your Blazin game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm Pat Mayo.
Alrighty, friendly reminder, Allen Robinson, he's not going to play today. Let's see, Khalil Mack is not going to play today.
Correct.
Marlon Mack will
Is going to play, like I said.
Like
He
you have said
is
multiple times.
playing.
You are on top of it.
I am on
I would
top of
listen
it.
to what Jessie has to say.
Yeah.
Matt Breida is going to play. We just mentioned he's going to be a little banged up. It's going to be limited, but it is what it is. Randall Cobb will also play today.
So now that we got that out of the way, it's time for Put Up Your Bukes. Roll
Yeah,
the
there it is.
open.
So jacked, bro.
Let's go. Yeah, Jack Steve Buchanan is here, and Julian Edlow joins him.
Yeah, Julian.
So,
there's mine.
Steve, we need your top 3 plays with some DK point projections. And, Julian, you know your job. You're going to fight him right back. So, your first Buke, please, Steve.
Well, I'm just glad Julian finally shows his face once again. He's been absent for 2 weeks, probably just so embarrassed about his performance on this segment. But I'm glad that he
I
finally
had to take a 2-week sabbatical after listening to your segment for weeks on end. I was in the rainforest for 2 weeks pondering the meaning of DFS.
Oh, my God, a tiny violin! Oh, man.
That wins, dude.
I'm
Put
sorry.
up your bukes
Can
is
we
over.
get that
You win.
freeze? Like, I need a screenshot of that.
So anyways, let's talk about Jermaine Kearse for 17 DK fantasy points. Look, I get it. Nobody wants to go back down this road again because Kearse absolutely burned us last week. He put a big fat 0 up in week 7. In a cake matchup against the Vikings out of the slot, he was targeted twice and was held without just with no receptions there. But he's in a pretty good spot here again, and this is with a week without Robbie Anderson and still without Quincy Enunwa. Realistically, he should get at least 6 targets in this game at the minimum, I feel like. The Bears have been targeted against 48 times against receivers out of the slot. They've allowed 40 receptions for 262 receiving yards. And then who's the guy who covers the slot most for the Bears? Bryce Callahan. He's allowed 21 receptions on 23 targets for 159 yards and a touchdown. Bounce back week for Kearse. Suck it up. Put him in your lineup. Get him in there.
Do you agree it's going to be a bounce back week,
Like
Julian?
and
do you
from
see
Julian.
17 fantasy points happening?
I'll start with no, I don't see 17 DK points happening here, but Steve isn't giving himself that tough of a job. Ooh, let's take a guy that had 0 points last week and call a bounce back.
There's the
I mean, yes, Kearse is going to have a pretty good game. Anunwa is hurt. Bilal Powell, the pass-catching running back, is hurt. Robbie Anderson is out. It's pretty much a can't-fail spot for Jermaine Kearse. He has to get targets. He's going up against the Chicago Bears defense that, doesn't have Khalil Mack, their best player, so that should make things easier. It's really not a hard pick. Kearse should have a good game. I just don't think he'll reach 17 DraftKings points. If you're paying down, I like guys like Michael Crabtree for 4,800, Jordy Nelson for 4,700. I think there are some better plays that you can get away with in that range, or Martavis Bryant all the way down at 3,700. But sure, Kearse is a fine play, just not 17 points.
Okay, so we got a little bit of fighting on the first Buke. What about your second Buke, Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sammy Watkins for 15 DK fantasy points. I mean, he's usually the forgotten man in this Chiefs offense, but he draws a fantastic matchup today. You should see a ton of Bradley Roby, who has allowed 375 yards on 27 receptions with 3 touchdowns this season. Watkins is a total boomer bust candidate. That's how he's been all season long, but he's averaging just under 6 targets a game and should come in at fairly low ownership because nobody wants to play Watkins, but he's going to help you save some salary at 4,600 this week. So I think Watkins can be a pretty good play today and probably a sneaky one as well.
So he's averaging 10.7 fantasy points per game. Julian, do you see him getting 15?
Nah, not a good play here. I would rather play Jermaine Kearse in this spot, who's actually a decent play. And then I gave you the other names, Crabtree, Nelson. I like all those guys more. Sammy Watkins, he didn't do anything against Denver earlier this year, but he got hurt in the second quarter, so we don't really know what he would have done in that matchup. But Chris Conley, who filled in as the wide receiver too, after that, caught 4 passes for 13 yards in that game. So it's not like he was able to take advantage of the matchup that Steve likes here. 15 DK points, too lofty for me in this spot. There are 4 or 5 guys in this price range that I like more than Watkins.
Okay, so far it's a no for Julian on both your picks. Let's get this final Buke.
Well, he already showed his hand in this one because he already said he liked Martavis Bryant. So if he fights this one, it just shows how much of a fraud Julian is. But I have him up for 12 DK fantasy points today. And, Bryant has not been someone you've been looking at. But now that Cooper is gone, somebody's got to line up with Nelson here, and it's going to be Bryant. It's hard to project him for a huge game here because he hasn't seen more than 11 DK fantasy points on the season. But this is the game where he could actually start having his breakout party here. If he can stop dropping the ball, he's in a great spot here against the Colts. Like I said, it's hard to project the floor for Bryant here. He's more of a boomer bust play, kind of like Sammy Watkins, but he's going to help you save some salary here this week. I think he's in a good matchup. So Bryant, he's not someone who's really been talked about, even with Cooper gone, but I really like him in this spot. So go ahead, tell him why it's a bad play, even though you already said you liked him 5 minutes ago.
Okay, go ahead, Julian.
Well, I mean, the spot that I think that needs to be harped on here that Steve only mentioned at the end is that the reason we like Martavis Bryant this week is because of the Amari Cooper trade. You can sell me as much as you want with the matchup against the Colts. It's a fine matchup, but this is all because Amari Cooper is gone. Martavis Bryant was barely on the field almost as a wide receiver 3. Now he's the wide receiver 2. So for 3,700, I think he's terrific value. I think Bryant is the tournament play here, and in cash games, I just can't bring myself to trust him, though. So that's why I'm paying $1,000 more at 47 for Jordy Nelson in cash games, and that's about as good as I can do here. Martavis Bryant's a fine play.
After being gone for 2 weeks, I figured you'd have a better segment than this. This was pretty bad for you.
Wow.
I disagreed with all your picks except for the one that I said I liked.
Oh, okay.
Don't play Kearse. Don't play Watkins. Play the guys I told you to play.
An accurate assessment.
Interesting.
Of what happened.
You guys are really getting along today. I like
Yeah.
it. All right, let's hit some questions up here real quick. Steve, Hunt or Mixon?
That's a close one, but I think Mixon has the more like for cash. I think Mixon is better for cash, but Hunt's better for GPPs. Calm down, Julian.
I'm the idiot. Kareem Hunt is probably the second best play on this slate behind James Conner. This is an easy one. I know that we usually do one person per question. You go Kareem Hunt there. Come on.
It's okay. Just poor Jonathan Roy at home.
I couldn't let this poor guy let Buchanan give him that Mixon answer. That's garbage.
Everybody has their back to you. Nobody wants to look at you.
Hey, Steve, is Gabriel still a good start even if the weather's bad?
I mean, I will say I'm not big on weather things, but the wind is a little bit concerning. There is going to be some high winds in that game, so I'd rather look elsewhere.
Ooh.
Jules, we touched on this in Chase or Fade earlier with Reed. I know you're kind of a fan of Juju, but Mike Evans or Juju? Which one would you go there?
Oh, you got to go Juju. I know I like Antonio Brown better than Juju if you're just going plays straight up, but Smith-Schuster's a great play on this slate against the Browns.
All right. We've got to go. Steve, can you show us the violin one more time just so I can screen grab it on my phone? Okay.
Tiny
you.
violin.
I guess I'll have to start bringing props next week.
Hashtag tiny
props
violin.
help.
Yeah, put in some effort for a change. Not your stupid hat. What are you?
Yeah,
five?
I do research on the slate and give people good answers, not think about what little mini violin I can bring on the show.
Perfect.
Okay, bro, with the hat.
I just got a
Grow
great
up.
screen grab.
Too much time to do hair, too much slate breaking
All
going
right,
on.
you two, save it for later because coming up, we're bringing Garion in for his 3 biggest fades of the day.
Welcome to $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com. I'm Brendan Glassheen. We're here to make your money. The goal, identifying players with the most upside for Sunday's main slate. Let's check in with our $1 Million panel, Reed Fowler and Adam Levitan. Reed, who do you think can have $1 million impact this weekend? Give me a couple of targets.
Yeah, my first one is Jarvis Landry at 7,200 versus Pittsburgh. Look, he didn't come out necessarily with a big game last week, but he's number 1 in target share, tied for first in target share throughout the season. Air yards, he's T5. Pittsburgh is 4th best for opposing wide receivers. We've seen Tyler Boyd have a decent game. We've seen Willie Snead back in week 5 have a good game. So Jarvis Landry fits in that slot. His ownership is good. That leverage position is good. Jameis Winston will be my second one at 6,000 versus Cincinnati. Look, there are bad defenses that give us good quarterback play. We see it with Atlanta, Matt Ryan. We also see it with Jameis. We also see it with Andy Dalton in Cincinnati. He goes up against Cincinnati. They're 4th best for opposing quarterbacks. So give me Jameis Winston at $6,000.
Okay, yeah, I think Jarvis Landry is a guy that I would be interested in from a market share perspective, as Reed said. For me, I'm going to stick at the running back position. I'm going to go with James Conner as the first one, not expecting Le'Veon Bell back for this game. And James Conner just has such an enormous role in this offense, can project him for 20, 25, even sometimes 30 touches here against the Cleveland team that should be so tired. They've played so many overtime games and the offense plays so fast. They generate plays for their opponent at such a high rate. Other running back I'm going to go with is Kareem Hunt. And I was scared about his role early in the year, not getting too much work in the pass game. That has changed now. And the game plan against Denver for every team in the league is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. They're so bad against the run and still pretty strong against the pass. So those would be my 2 running back plays.
Yeah, I loved no Lev Bell, right? So fire up James Conner. Love it.
All right, thanks to our $1 Million panel. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you next week on $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com.
All right, we got 29 minutes until lineups lock. Say hello to Garion Thorn, Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow. Gentlemen, I'm feeling thorny.
Must mean it's time for Thorn in my side. Garion picks his top 3 fades of the day, guys. He wants nowhere near his lineup. And then Steve and Julian weigh in. And, I'm sorry, but I have to just take credit. I wrote that line.
You did.
I made you say it, but I wrote it. Yeah,
I sold
you did
it
sell
because
it.
I meant it.
Yeah, he really did. So let's get our first Thorn, Garion, please.
Yeah, it's crazy. Somehow I made it through 4 years of high school with no one ever making that correlation between my last name and the word horny. No, I heard it every day.
Oh, man. Was this between you being stuffed in lockers?
No, it's too big to fit in lockers. That's the virtue of being fat. Anyway, guys, I don't like this week. Antonio Brown. I don't want to play Antonio Brown. And a lot of this is just because of the price point. I'm not telling you in a season-long league to sit Antonio Brown, but we've talked a lot about Juju Smith-Schuster on this show so far, and I would agree with the sentiment that's basically been put out there to this point. He is a better play in this matchup than Antonio Brown. You look at Denzel Ward, who has started to shadow receivers the past couple of weeks. He's going to be facing up a lot with Brown, and he's been exceedingly good this season despite the fact he's a rookie. In fact, by Pro Football Focus's coverage metrics, he is the 3rd best cornerback in football. And then beyond even just the matchup, Antonio Brown really hasn't been peak Antonio Brown so far this season. He has not been near as efficient as we've seen him in the past. He is actually only averaging 6.7 yards per target this season. That is the 4th worst mark among receivers with 40 targets to their name. That puts him with like Nelson Aguilar. That actually has him identical with Jarvis Landry, a player who we have never talked about as efficient in fantasy football. So I just don't think this is a good spot. He's only the amount of points he would have to score to reach 3x value in this game. He's only done it once so far this season. I don't think he breaks that trend against Denzel Ward.
Yeah, so he's $8,500. What do you think about staying away from Antonio Brown, Steve?
I think he's pretty good for a GPP player, but I'm not really looking at him towards cash. I mean, when you think about playing him in a GPP, there's a lot of talk this week about Odell, AJ Green. So I feel like Brown can give you a good leverage spot in this place. But, you know, he's still getting the targets. He's seen double digits in all but 2 weeks this season. But like Gary mentioned, he hasn't been that smash spot guy that we've been used to all season long. So I feel like in GPPs, he's a good play because, look, he's still Antonio Brown. We want to talk about how bad the matchup is for him, but that's never really stopped us before. Antonio Brown has shown before that even in these bad matchups, he's still a viable play. So tournaments, I'm okay with using him, but cash, I'll have to agree with Gary, and I don't think he's that great of a play here today.
All right, so Steve is out for cash. How do you feel about this, Julian?
Perfect. I get to disagree with Steve and Gary in here. I think Antonio Brown is fine in tournaments and cash. He's $8,500. That matches his cheapest price point this season. Prior to the Steelers' bye, he had his 2 best games of the season, 24.5 and 31.1 DraftKings points. He topped 100 yards in both of them. He had 2 touchdowns in one game, 1 in the other. His next best game of the season, that was in week 1 against the Browns when he had 16 targets and scored 24.3 DraftKings points. And you might remember, Steve the weatherman, there was some pretty bad weather in Cleveland on that day. So Denzel Ward, yeah, he's a good player. Is he good enough to shut down Antonio Brown and scare me away from him in cash or tournaments? Absolutely not. This team ranks near the bottom of the league. I think bottom 7 or 8 teams against the wide receiver position in terms of DraftKings points allowed. Antonio Brown is a fine play for $8,500.
All right, well, what about we get your second Thorn here, Gary? And seems like the guys kind of agree, disagree. I don't know. I wanted some more fighting, but let's get your second one.
Didn't we just have enough?
I was going to say, this segment tends to be a little bit more timid. Everyone's got to relax a little bit after just duking it out and put up your bukes.
I know.
Although I do know for a fact that Julian disagrees with this particular pick. We've already duked this out on the air this week, but I don't like Isaiah Crowell this week. I know a lot of people see him as a salary-saving maven. I get it. The volume is probably going to be around 15 to 20 carries. Look, you go back the last 3 seasons, Isaiah Crowell has only played 65% or more snaps in 2 games, and both of those games were with the Cleveland Browns. The most recent one was week 1 of last season. I don't think just because Bilal Powell is not active that all of a sudden Isaiah Crowell is going to boost into Todd Gurley, David Johnson territory in terms of usage. He's not Latavius Murray, and even if he was, he's not in nearly as good a spot as Latavius Murray is with a Minnesota Vikings team that actually has a capable NFL offense. I mean, the Jets have the 3rd lowest implied point total of the week. That's bad for a running back who needs to score a touchdown. And when I say needs to, I mean that. He is only averaging 5.1 DKFP when he does not score a touchdown this season. The Bears haven't allowed a running back to score a touchdown, so it would seem like a weird time to lean on that. I just think that Trenton Cannon is going to be as involved, maybe just slightly less so than Bilal Powell has been in the past. I don't see this massive spike with Crowell.
So we know you disagree with this, Julian. Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to see a massive spike considering he's $3,700. Yes, the matchup is bad against the Bears, but at this cheap for these kind of touches, I think that's fine. Not to mention that Khalil Mack has been ruled out of this game, so that probably helps the Jets' offense a little bit. Look, Crowell's coming off 2 bad games. There's no other way to spin it. He had 7.2 and 6 DraftKings points in those games, but Garian's worried about this workload. He had 15 touches and 12 touches in those 2 games. His touch, he should be in the 15 to 20 touch range in this game, and that's just something that you can't find for $3,700. Am I playing Isaiah Crowell in cash? No. There are so many running back plays I like on this slate that just make it really tough to fit him in your lineup. But if you're making multiple GPP lineups, you can absolutely pay $3,700 for a guy that has 20 touch upside.
Steve, you looked like you weren't buying that.
I mean, Julian's really selling me here. He's in a bad matchup, coming off 2 bad games. Probably
Steve
not
thinks
playing
the Jets are going to win this game.
Shh, I'm talking. I look, the Bears simply have a really good run defense. I mean, there's no other way around that. I mean, despite that 158 rushing yard game from the Dolphins, they've held opposing backs to under 100 yards in each week. Gary mentioned they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown yet this season. All their damage against the Bears have come on passing down backs. Guess what Crowell isn't? A passing down back. He gets less than 2 targets a game. Yes, he might have 15 to 20 touch potential upside, but you actually have to do something with those touches to actually score. What's he going to get? Double-digit fantasy points? Maybe he'll get 9. Oh, yeah, that really makes me want to play him. 9 DK fantasy points for Crowell. Yeah, throw him in my lineup. No, terrible play. This is
he's averaging 14, and another running back got hurt.
Because that means everything. So that means automatic 14 today. Matchups don't matter.
Automatic 14
today. Oh, okay.
Where'd you pull the number 9 out of?
Okay, well, so we can
This guy's
see
an idiot.
that Steve is going to agree with Garion on that second one. All right, so let's get your third and final Thorn.
It's kind of in a similar vein. They're basically the exact same archetype of running back in a very similar spot. But Doug Martin, if I'm not paying for Crowell, I'm not paying an extra $700 for Doug Martin this week in virtually the same spot. I mean, Oakland, again, they're just not a team that I want to bank on touchdown upside with. And I think if you do want to do that, if you think that's the particular narrative you're going to drive home here, do it with the receiving game. Do it with Derek Carr. Do it with Jalen Richard. Just there's no reason to use Doug Martin here, especially with Chris Carson being on a similar tier of pricing this week. I think he's in line for just as much volume, and it could definitely be of a higher efficiency, considering that right now there are only 3 teams in the league who score on a touchdown per drive basis less often than the Raiders. The Titans, the Bills, and the Cardinals. That's not really the class of team you want to be really known with. So I just don't get the Doug Martin thing this week. I will not be saving salary with him or with Crowell. Give me Richard. Give me Chris Carson. Those are the running backs that I'll be looking to save with.
Steve, you agreed with the Crowell fade. How do you feel about Doug Martin?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Martin here at all. I just don't like the game script for him here. I mean, I love Andrew Luck this week, and if Luck's going to be producing, Martin is not going to be in a position where he's going to be carrying the ball a lot, especially if they're behind in the second half. All those targets are going to go to Richard if it's going to be a play with the running back here. So I don't like Martin here at all. I just think a lot of the lower tier running backs are just potential busts this week, and that's why I think paying up for running back is just the way to go this week. All the value plays that we have on here are just too dicey for me, and Martin falls right into that grouping there. So I'm definitely off Martin here, but maybe Julian won't play him in cash, will play him in tournament.
Well,
let's hear it. 9 DK fantasy points. Let's hear it.
Yeah, Julian, what do you think about this one? It looks like you feel like maybe you might be agreeing with the guys.
I mean, the only attractive thing about Doug Martin this week is that John Gruden is dumb enough to say that he thinks Doug Martin is still a featured back in the NFL. True. So since he said that, the Raiders, John Gruden, since he's gotten there, has traded his best offensive player and his best defensive player. So maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. And that means he could give Doug Martin 20 carries in a game that could stay close against the Colts. So sure, in the same vein as playing Isaiah Crowell in a GPP at 3,700, you could entice me to play Doug Martin in a GPP for 4,400. But I think Jalen Richard for cheaper is the much better play, and I think you can use him in GPPs and in cash. He should be in line for more carries with Marshawn Lynch out, and then he's already played a really safe role in the receiving game. He's scored double-digit DK points in 3 of his last 4 games already, so Jalen Richard is the play here, but Gruden might be dumb enough to give Doug Martin enough touches to have a role here.
All right, thank you, my dudes. We see all your questions coming in. Included a heated battle right now on Facebook of LeBron or Jordan. So we'll get to that. Backed by popular demand, Mike Francesa.
That one's never.
Mike Francesa.
Always relevant.
All right, guys, let me toss this Mike Francesa package. Just roll it.
Another busy Sunday in the NFL. Mike Francesa of WFAN here to weigh in on today's action. Simple question: what games are catching your attention today?
I want to see the Green Bay team play against the Rams. I haven't been impressed by the Packers. I kind of think that they're really not a serious contender this year. They've had a little rest, so maybe Rodgers has got a chance to be a little bit better because I think he's been playing on a bad leg. Their defense was atrocious against the Niners. They get the most complete team in the league in the Rams. Let's see if they can stay in this and put a real scare into the Rams here. So that game interests me a lot.
Let's go to those Rams right now. They're 7-0. They got a game here today against Green Bay. Then they go on the road to the Saints, home against the Seahawks, home against the Chiefs. Do they go down at all these next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think they'll lose, but I think they'll still be the number one seed. I think they'll have the best record in the league. I think they'll be the number one seed in the NFC. I don't think they'll go undefeated, which will be the worst thing that ever happened to them. If you want to win a Super Bowl, do not go undefeated. Carrying the weight of trying to go undefeated and be perfect is a lot to carry. It's something that you should embrace if you get a chance, but I think it's as much a curse as it is a blessing. So best thing that can happen to a team is get a loss along the way. They'll get picked off. I don't think there's any question, but they are the most complete team. You take all three factors in the game. They play all three well. They have a big-time pass rush. They have a big-time defense. They play specials well. Looked last week at their blocked punts that really broke the game open. I mean, they do everything well. They're very well coached.
2 earlier games, both New York teams. Giants host the Redskins. Jets are at the Bears. Either of the New York teams pull out a win today?
You know, the Bears haven't learned. They're talented, but they haven't learned how to win yet. But the injuries that have hit the Jets are going to really hurt. If he doesn't have a Nunwa, which we don't know if he will yet, and he doesn't have Bilal Powell for the rest of the season, those were his favorite weapons, Sam's favorite weapons. I don't think the Jets are complete enough right now to beat the Bears, although I wouldn't be surprised if it was fairly close. The Bears have to figure out a way to finish games. That's their thing. And as far as the Giants, hey, they're capable of winning any game. The question is every week the same one. Are they going to get any blocking that week? Because if they do, they won in Houston. They should have won in Carolina. I think it's going to be a very big fight to the finish in that division. Not counting the Giants. They're not going to be in it. But the Giants are capable of beating anybody in that division.
All right, NFC divisional round rematch from last year tonight. Saints at Vikings, 2 Super Bowl contenders without a question. What do you like in this game?
I tell you right now, a big part for the Vikings is getting Griffin back on defense, which it looks like they're about to, and getting Cook back healthy with the hamstring on offense, which we thought they would last week. If those two guys are in the lineup, I think the Vikings win a close decision.
Mike Francesa of WFAN, he will jump on with us tomorrow to quickly preview Patriots and Bills.
All right, here we go. Time for some off-the-wall picks. Let's punch up Reed Fowler and Greg Ehrenberg.
Yes, we got to talk about which players you're going way off the board for this week. You get 1 pick each. Reed, tell me who you're going for.
Yeah, I feel like I have to fight Greg via online here to just keep the theme of this show going. But no, Adam Humphries for me in Tampa Bay at 3,400. I know he's a Buchanan favorite, and then Julian Edlow not favorite. So to me, Adam Humphries is in a good spot. Like Denard for Cincinnati, that slots cornerback, he is out. And what you do when you play against the Bengals is you attack the middle. They've given up a ton of points to tight ends and slot receivers in the past. Juju went off for 10 targets, right? 11 targets, 10 receptions. And the other teams have gone off really in the middle against Cincinnati in the slot. So Adam Humphries at 3,400, like it's going to be tough to pick which one of these Tampa Bay receivers or skill position guys do go off. But at 3,400, I'm willing to take a guy who's seen 6 targets last game and potentially could get more if DeSean Jackson doesn't play as much, if he's not motivated, so on and so forth. So Adam Humphries for me.
Hey, Greg, who are you going with?
Yeah, so I'm going to look at Duke Johnson here. So last week, I like Duke Johnson. Reed liked Duke Johnson. Steve Buchanan, the carrot top of DFS with his bag of props, he liked Duke Johnson. And you know what happened? We all took an L. Duke Johnson sucked. He wasn't as involved in the game as we thought he was going to be. But look at how this game sets up this week. We have the Browns are 8.5-point underdogs. I still think that Nick Chubb is the between the numbers running back. I think that Duke Johnson is going to be the pass catching running back. And I really think they're going to be playing from behind. They're going to need short dump off passes. So towards the end of the game, I think Duke Johnson for a cheap price could really put up some PPR points.
All right, good stuff, quick and dirty. Coming up, what are we going to have here? It says T's working up a sweat. We're
Working up a sweat.
Brew. We got a lot of questions we're going to be answering on YouTube and Facebook. Stick with us. Quick break.
It's time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Taryn Azak. Niners and Cardinals kicking off today at 4:25, and the status of San Francisco's starting running back Matt Breida remains up in the air. Adam Schefter reporting that Breida is likely to suit up but will be limited as he deals with an ankle injury. This could open the door for fourth-year man Raheem Mostert. Mostert stepped up in Week 7 against Rams after Breida left due to injury. He outproduced veteran Alfred Morris, rushing for 59 yards on 7 carries as well as hauling in 4 catches for 19 yards. Even with a healthy Breida in Week 6 against Green Bay, Mostert led the Niners with 87 yards on the ground. And if that doesn't convince you, let's take a look at the matchup against Arizona. The Cardinals are allowing more fantasy points to running backs than any other team in the NFL. So, is Mostert a must-start? He's at least worth considering as you fill out your lineups for Week 8.
All right, let's go immediately. Quad box, hit him with it. Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan. I don't know where his mini fiddle is.
It's a violin.
In the case.
It's not a fiddle.
Oh my God, you have
In
a
its
case for that?
tiny little case. So guys, it's time for working up a sweat. We're closing in on lock here, but who's a guy you were high on earlier in the week, but now you might want to pivot off of because of recent news or weather, Steve, or, just a hunch.
Man, he hates that so much.
You can also give a different option, somebody you're pivoting to. So give us a couple of picks here, whatever you want. Jeff, start us off.
I'll start with Jameis Winston, and I still think Jameis Winston has a nice floor for cash games, but I think if you're looking for upside this week, you have to look to Jared Goff at this price. He's going to be lesser owned in GPPs, and the Rams have the biggest implied team total we've seen all year. It's like 32.5 or 33. So Jared Goff leads the league in receivers getting tackled at the 1-yard line. So just keep that in mind. At some point, he's going to have a massive passing day. I think there's a very good chance it comes here against a very sort of not that good Green Bay secondary. We saw them sort of get torn apart a little bit by C.J. Beathard last week. So I like pivoting to Goff a lot in GPPs at that price.
Reed, work up a sweat with me here, bud. Who are you pivoting to?
Yeah, Ebron is someone that I'm looking at. Like, he's going to be a decent GPP play if you want to at 4,900. But you got Jimmy Graham at 4,700. We've been talking about this quite a bit. Jeff likes Goff in that spot. I also like Jimmy Graham. He's seeing more targets now. He's more connected, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers. And LA, again, I always hark on this. You attack the middle of these defenses that can't necessarily guard the tight ends and the slot receivers. So you have Jimmy Graham, LA allowing 500 yards to opposing tight ends. They're allowing the 9th most DK fantasy points as well. So Jimmy Graham, 4,700. If you want to stay away from the higher price or higher owned guys in that game, I think Jimmy Graham at 4,700 would be a good pivot.
All right, Julian, who are you going with?
Yeah, so for me here, I think Jalen Richard is not necessarily a guy I don't like anymore because I just talked about him. I think he's a really good play in PPR with the way Oakland's backfield looks. But the running back position is just too full to play him if you're making 1 or 2 lineups or you're doing a cash lineup or something. And I'll even say the same about Isaiah Crowell, who was a guy that I vouched for earlier in the show. We just don't have enough space with the guys like Phillip Lindsay, with Kerryon Johnson, to fit these guys in our lineups. I feel like Todd Gurley, if you want to pay up for him, is a good play. James Conner, Kareem Hunt. There's so many running backs on the board that when you get to these last couple of value spots, Jalen Richard, Isaiah Crowell were guys that I thought I would be playing at least one of them for my value running back earlier in the week, and now I find myself using very little of them. Not because I don't like them, but because there are so many good running back plays.
Steve, who are you pivoting off of and to?
I was going to mention, Jessie's really been poking me all show. I don't know what her problem with me today is, but I just want to say respectfully, I think your shirt looks like pajamas.
Thank you
I'm gonna
very
go
much.
Talk about...
It's not pajamas, and it's actually a dress, Steve.
It is. You can't see, the bottom half.
But it's a dress.
It's pretty
It's like
impressive.
you're wearing a tracksuit, to be honest. That's what I thought you were wearing.
All right, to be honest.
I think you look great, Jesse.
Thank you
I do
very
too.
much.
You look phenomenal.
I need some friends on this show.
Let me just say that next time I see you all on Sunday, I will be wearing a tracksuit because of what
great.
you guys
Cool.
just said.
Can't wait for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was originally on O.J. Howard a lot, and there's nothing wrong with O.J. Howard this week. I mean, he's been one of Winston's favorite targets in the red zone, and that game the team total has a projection of over 25 points. But I found my way over to David Njoku as of late. I mean, I think you're going to get better ownership with Njoku here, and he's been just as good as a spot. I mean, you look at the Steelers against opposing tight ends. They've just been incredibly poor in that spot. Njoku has been heavily involved in the offense as of late, averaging 9.3 targets over the past 3 weeks. So I think Njoku is going to end just as good a spot as Howard.
This is classic Steve, by the way, because David Njoku will probably be the highest owned tight end on the slate.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Is that right?
Okay.
How about the guys at the bottom just keep it down there?
Ooh. Ooh,
Easy,
telling him
Jeff,
what's
easy.
up there,
Too bad
Jeff.
Kevin Coleman's not playing in this slate because you just choose him.
All right, so
Still his slate approved pick for today, I'm sure.
speaking of slate approved,
Yeah, slate approved.
No, you want to roll through questions first, or we want to go to slate approved now, then roll through questions?
I feel like
I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Let's take a vote. Who
slate
wants to do
approved,
slate
raise
approved
your
now?
hand.
Whatever Jesse doesn't want, I'll take that.
Wow, Steve.
Oh, man.
Wow, trying
That's
to
'cause
start
you were,
something
that's 'cause
here.
you were crapping on his mini
Hot
fiddle.
take, hot take central. Fine.
Yeah, get Julian out of there. Good.
We'll go to questions. We'll go to questions, guys,
Okay.
because you guys either didn't vote or didn't know what we were doing. So you have some there?
Yeah, here we go. All right, I presented this, I believe, to Reed and Julian earlier, but I'll go to Jeff. Jeff, Kerryon Johnson or Marlon Mack?
I got to go Johnson just because Mac's health. He might still have a bit of a limited workload, so I'd definitely go Johnson there.
Hey, Reed, Bethard, Eli, Baker, or Flacco?
Oh, God.
You got to pick one.
Flacco.
Eli.
Just because, I mean, Eli's in actually a nice spot for GPPs if you want to go that route. A lot of injuries on the Washington defense side. So you want to stack for GPPs and get really contrarian. I think OBJ and Eli is decent, but Flacco and the Ravens run the most plays. So I would say Flacco in that spot.
Steven, Aaron Rodgers, Andy Dalton, or Jared Goff?
I'm just going to go with Rodgers. I mean, it's really close. I mean, Rodgers and Goff, have to be the two favorites here on the slate, but I'm just going to go slightly with Rodgers here just because the Rams are favored here, and if Rodgers has to be playing from behind, definitely nothing wrong with that.
Hey, Jeff, Browns and Jalen Richard or Taylor Gabriel and Cardinals?
I go Browns defense? What?
I mean,
No, you can't play the Browns defense, so I guess I got to go with the other one, whoever that was.
Taylor Gabriel and the Cardinals.
Wow.
This is the point in the show where the questions really get wild.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Because people are panicking. We need your help.
All right, Jeff, tracksuit or pajamas?
Wow.
You know what? Jesse makes it look good. That wasn't an insult.
Thank
It
you.
looks like a fancy tracksuit.
Well,
That's
look,
all.
Come on, we don't care about the tracksuits. We got to help these panicking
Listen,
people out.
basically what we can take from this is that even if it looks like I'm wearing pajamas, it looks good. Continue. Do you have some questions?
Oh, yeah. No, wait. You don't want to continue with this
No.
one? Okay. Julian, Evan Ingram, is he a good play today?
Not really. I would probably find somebody like David Njoku, who's going to be a really chalky tight end that I like. Vance McDonald for the Steelers. O.J. Howard, who Steve was pivoting off of, is a fine play. There's a lot of good plays.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, Doug Baldwin or Taylor Gabriel?
Man, neither, really.
But-
I'll just say Baldwin if you got to choose, but I don't like either.
Okay.
All
The
right.
slot receivers or the slot defenders in Detroit do give up a lot. This could be a nice bounce back for Baldwin. The Detroit slot cornerbacks, are not good.
All right, let's slide in one more here before we get your slate approved. I'll send this to our basketball guy. Demetrius D. Hall would like to know, Julian, LeBron or Jordan?
It's Jordan, but LeBron, even in the loss in that last finals, what he did in game one, it's getting closer than people think. Jordan wouldn't be beating this Warriors team.
Did you hear LeBron fired Ty Lue today?
All the way
Yes,
from
I
LA.
did hear that. He put the call in. The Cavs are 0-6.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's do slate approved picks. So your lock for today's main slate, Reed, please start us off.
Yeah, Julian mentioned it before. My boy Philip Lindsay going up against Kansas City, $5,200, especially with Rice Freeman out. Like Denver gives up the most receiving yards to opposing running backs. It's just they're a sieve on defense for running backs. Philip Lindsay should get around 15 to 20 touches. He's my lock.
Steve, who is your must play today? Your slate approved.
Yeah,
pick.
just go with the obvious here. James Conner. It's not a big surprise here. He mozzarella shredded cheese this Browns team already once this season. No reason why he shouldn't get over 100 rushing yards again this week. So just get Conner in there.
Hey, Jeff, who you going with? Who's your lock?
Brandon Cooks. Good luck, Draymond Williams. He got spun around like a top by Marquise Goodwin last week. What do you think Brandon Cooks is going to do for you? 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Let's go, Brandon Cooks.
Jules, slate approved, please.
Yeah, I talked a lot earlier about James Conner and why he's such a good play. And apparently he's clearly such a good play that even Steve can see it. So we know that we have to play James Conner. So I'll take this moment to apologize for Reed for calling him a square on our SNY show. Philip Lindsay is a really good play that is growing on me, and I will be playing him today.
All right.
I'm your friend on this show, Julian. I'll be your friend, bud.
Guys,
I got some people on my side.
we still have 2 minutes. Any final thoughts you want to throw out there before we get to some of these questions? Does anybody have something they feel like they really need to say? Steve, I feel like
Steve, you got
to
to bring props now. I feel like you've outdone yourself. You have props in every show.
Well, I see Jeff's got some props behind him, which is pretty cool. Reed, what do you have to offer?
No, I mean, there's nothing to offer other than analysis here as opposed to props. I will say Jeff did move from his guest room or his guest studio, wherever it was, back to the office.
Yeah.
So I do like this background a lot better. There's much more to look at.
I remember that. He had the microwave right behind him.
It was
the
a
microwave
TV.
TV.
It was TV. It was a TV. All right, we'll grab like 1 or 2 of these questions here.
Here we go, Julian. Allison or Gabriel?
Ooh, I think you got to go Allison there. Just more upside against the Rams. Green Bay should be chucking from behind in that game.
Reed, Allison, Baldwin, or Edelman?
Ooh, Edelman in that spot.
And Drew Borkovich says, too many commercials. We get it. Buffalo Wild Wings.
Buffalo Wild Wings.
Hey,
They're
Drew,
tasty.
someone's got to pay the bills around here, okay?
Yeah, it's Buffalo Wild Wings.
All right, dudes, we appreciate it. Lineup's locked here in less than a minute, so I'd get on that already for all of you at home who have not done it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shout out to your outfit. It was a big hit with the guys.
It was a huge hit. So I think
It's actually really nice. I wish
mean,
people could get
I
like
know.
the whole.
It looks really good. I mean, I always look good. We all know that, but
I can go take a nap.
Slate approved.
That's only, yeah. Slate approved. Hit her with the Slate approved,
Yeah,
please.
Slate approved. All right, I'm Jessie. He's Emerson. This is The Sweat. We'll
Tomorrow
be back
at 6.
tomorrow at 6. We'll be back here next Sunday, same time, same place, 11:30. You know where to watch us, and be sure to tune in tomorrow night. Later.
Good night.
Good night.